Those are songs I grew up on. But I'm not that old. I really didn't. So when Becca was saying that that I had her memorize that, yes, she is telling the truth. One of the things that we do in children's church is, and now I'm gonna preach with the organ tonight. Let's go, Pam. One of the things that we do every month is we have a different memory verse for them. So this month, the month of March, happens to be John 3:16, and it's amazing. The kids learn it, they get it in their heart. Last month, it was actually about a month and a half that we took and we learned the Lord's Prayer, and the kids know it. Because I sat with a couple of them on Wednesday night as we were saying the Lord's Prayer, and they didn't even have to look at the screens because they knew it. So isn't that cool? They're learning. Of course, they get prizes for learning, but they're still learning. So, yes, the second thing that I need to say tonight before I get started, is the Easter egg fill that's coming this Saturday at 9 a.m. The bonus is, because all we're doing is we're taking the candy, piece of candy, put it in the egg, piece of candy, put it in the mouth, piece of candy, put it in the egg. It's a bonus if you come. And I promise you, all the candy that's out here, it's not going in my office anymore. It's going straight downstairs because it's bad when it goes to my office. We talked about this. But anyway, are you ready? Did you have a good day? I had a great day. You know what? I'm not even ready to preach yet, but you know why I had a great day? Because I got a little nap. That always helps the day, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, man. And I had pie and ice cream. Right there, two things. So let's talk about this. Who are you? Can you imagine? I want you to imagine your picture on a milk carton. Do you remember when we were kids and the old milk cartons that we used to get at school, and then they would even be at the grocery store and they would have a picture on it? Do you remember that? Is anybody old enough to remember that? Thank you. I'm glad. It was way before my time, but I read stories about it. I'll stay away. Because what if, imagine that your picture is the one that's on the milk carton. And just be thankful that I chose to put a milk carton up there and not say post office wall or something like that. Okay? Just this, you should thank me for that. But what would they say if they didn't know your name? What description would they put underneath there? What would that description be? If they didn't know your name and they had to put a generic description under your picture, what would it be? Who are you? Yes. Who are you? What about somebody that saw you and they go, oh, I know that person. Can't remember their name. That's Miss Snooty. Or, oh, that's that handsome guy. Or that's Mr. Knows-It-All. And I ask this because too often the words that we would use to describe ourselves are very different than the way that God sees us. So if we ask, who are you? We would say, well, I'm this, this, and this. Is that what God says? And too often those words that I use to describe myself are not always very good. For us to arrive at this place of having a life that's filled with grace, filled with peace, filled with purpose, I need to have a proper picture of who I am. I need to know who I am. And believe it or not, in order to know who I am, I first have to know who God is, and then I have to know how he sees me. See, because I see things based on my vision. Problem is, often my vision is all messed up. Because if I take off my glasses, you know what? My vision is okay. I can still kind of read my paper, but you're all blurry. So I'll just leave my glasses off tonight. No, I won't even go there. But do you see, so it was like, I don't know, I was about 40-ish when the street signs, as I'm driving down the road, got a little blurry. So what did I do? I went to the eye doctor. And I humbled myself and went to the eye doctor and had my vision corrected. And he did it by simply giving me new eyes, a pair of glasses, vision fixed. If only it was that easy with changing how we see ourselves. Think about that. If only it was that easy changing how we see ourselves. We've talked the story of Mephibosheth before, and he's one of my favorite characters in the Bible, not just because he has this awesome name, but because he understood eventually exactly who he was. So let's go through his story tonight. Are you ready? For Mephibosheth. Everybody say Mephibosheth. Boy, that gets you going, doesn't it? So the first time we see Mephibosheth is in 2 Samuel chapter 4, and it says this: Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame in his feet. Now let's stop there. Do you notice that the first introduction of this guy doesn't even mention his name? Prior to coming face to face with the king, this is how Mephibosheth was described. This is how he was defined. This is how others saw him. And this is how he saw himself. Here's what we know of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was I'm going to see how many times I can say that tonight and not mess it up. He was the son of Jonathan, the grandson of Saul. He was the first king, who was the first king of Israel. Saul and Jonathan were killed in the battle, leaving the throne to be taken over by David. And in those days, when a new king often staked out his kingdom, he did it by doing what? Killing everybody else. Well, guess who's in line? That would be Mephibosheth. Now David had no intention to do this, but Mephibosheth didn't know that. But if David was intent on killing or murdering all of Saul's heirs, this boy would be the first on the list because he was the heir to the throne. So for nearly 2 decades, the young man lived in this distant land, unable to walk and unable to take care of himself. Meanwhile, David's kingdom flourished and Israel grew to 10 times its original size, and David knew no defeat on the battlefield, and Israel was at peace, and the people were thankful, and everything was just all wonderful. So one day, and you can picture David, one day, his kingdom is just, everything's going great, and he's out standing on his balcony overlooking this safe, peaceful city, reflecting on his life as king, when his thought goes back to a promise he had made to Jonathan. And he returns and he comes back and he gets in there and he says to his servant, "Is there anyone still left in Saul's family? I want to show kindness to this person for Jonathan's sake." And servant standing nearby says this: "Well, Jonathan has a son still living who is crippled in both feet. He's at the house over in Lodabar." Now again, no name, just a description. David's only response is, "Where is this son?" David showed no concerns for the imperfections of the boy. He didn't ask, "Where is Mephibosheth, this problem child, the one who can't take care of himself?" But he simply says, "Where is this son?" It made no difference to David that Mephibosheth was helpless, that he was crippled, that it only mattered to him where he was and where David wanted him to be, and David wanted him in his house. Hear this tonight. It doesn't matter if you feel helpless. Doesn't matter if you feel crippled by your past. It only matters where God is and where he wants you to be. Many of us know what it's like to carry a stigma through life. Something attached to our name and description. In fact, every time our name is mentioned, how you're defined, what people think, or even what you think of yourself, that stigma follows. Now in college, years ago, when I did go to college, and years ago when I was at college, I played intramural sports. I was an athlete back, I know. I was an incredible athlete back then. Unfortunately, there's no YouTube now to trust me, I was. But I played intramural sports, and it's at our college, we had 4 intramural sports, and our floor, 3E, 3 East, came in, this is terrible. We came in second every single year in all 4 sports. Serious story. In football, 4 years in a row, we were second. In basketball, 4 years in a row, we were, oh yeah, go say it loud. Go ahead, you're putting that stigma on me. In volleyball, 4 years in a row, we were, yeah, see? And in softball, 4 years in a row, we were second. I know, you're feeling, I can see the tears coming because you're crying for me. But you know what they called me? You know what they called us? Oh, hey, second place floor. Oh, Mike, you're part of second place floor. Oh, you guys aren't quite good enough, are you? Oh, not quite good enough again, Mike. The stigma of not being quite good enough followed us everywhere we went. Now, that's just a fun story. It's true, but it's a fun story. But think about something. How often has our past, our mistakes, followed us everywhere we go? Even if other people can't see them, we see them. I can't shake what I've done and how it sticks to me. And because of that, I begin to define myself. I begin to define who I am by what I've done, what mistakes I've made, what I think about myself, and by what others think of me. And I find myself asking, isn't there anyone who sees me for who I am and not for what I've done? I want to tell you tonight, yes, there is. It's our King. Because when God speaks of us, just as when David spoke of Mephibosheth, he didn't describe him being crippled. He didn't describe him being helpless. When God speaks of us, he doesn't mention my past. He doesn't mention my pain or what a pain I've been. He doesn't mention my problems. Instead, he lets me share in his glory. And he calls me his child. Mephibosheth carried this stigma for 20 years. When the people mentioned his name, they mentioned his problem. But when the king mentioned his name, he called him son. And let me tell you tonight, one word from the palace, one word from the throne room of the king, telling me who I am, offsets 1,000 voices that are in the streets today telling me who I'm not. Let's go back to Mephibosheth. I'm surprised I haven't messed up that name yet, but I will. Imagine the king of the table of the king is set. You know, and the king doesn't have a little 2-person table. You know that. He's got this huge table. You just picture it. It's set. He's got all his perfect, important people, all his muscle people, all his smart people. He's got them all around the table, and then here comes this unknown man. He's shuffling along, making all kinds of noise. He's not strong. He's not anything to look at. And yet he takes a seat at the king's table. He doesn't bring any value to the king. There's nothing that he can give to benefit the kingdom. In fact, there was absolutely nothing Mephibosheth could offer the king. And yet he had been invited, and a seat was reserved. How Mephibosheth's view of himself changed when he sat down at the table and he began to look and see himself through the eyes of the king. What do I see? What do I see of myself when I look through the eyes of my King Jesus? Do I see grace? Do I see undeserved forgiveness, unmerited freedom, unearned forgiveness? Because my view changes when I look at myself through the eyes of the King. How does God see us? Romans chapter 5, verse 6 says, you see, at just the right time when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. And God demonstrates on in verse 8, God demonstrates his own love for us. He loves us so much. If you look through the eyes of King Jesus, you are going to see an incredible love. Because while you were still a sinner with absolutely nothing to offer him, he gave his life for us. No longer am I hopeless, am I powerless, am I useless. No longer am I without hope, without vision, or without direction. No longer am I defined by my mistakes, my past, or even my heritage. I am now defined by whose I am. And every one of us tonight say, I am a child of the King. And if that's true, I need to start listening to his words to me. Because let's just take a step to the side for just a minute. Because who is it that whispers in our ears that, oh, you're over 60 now, or 70, or you're over 80, your ministry's done, you're done? Who whispers that in our ear? Who whispers in our ear that we no longer have value just because, oh, you retired, you're done. Your purpose on earth is over. Who whisper, and don't tell me that these thoughts don't go through our head, because they do. Others, we hear this. Who whispers in our ears that we're no longer capable of doing anything? Your life is finished. You're not up to the challenge. You're not equipped enough. You're not smart enough. You're not beautiful enough, or you're not talented enough. Who whispers those words into our ears? It's not Jesus. Elijah was running for his life. Stories found in 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah was running for his life and eventually finds himself in a cave. And God is there and asks Elijah, what are you doing here, Elijah? To which Elijah, he gives all these pity party excuses. Well, God, I'm the only one left. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me. Okay, was he really the only one left that was serving God? No. But somebody and something was whispering in his ear saying, you're the only one. There's no one else out there. You're worthless now. You might as well just die. What did God tell him? What did God tell him? He says, hey, Elijah, go stand at the edge of the cave and just listen. And this is the key to understanding, believing, and walking the life of who we truly are. Because we know how the story ends with Elijah in the cave and the all that happened. Because the roaring wind went by, right? It was the first thing was the roaring wind. Was it God? Okay, so let me tell you something. When the roaring wind of the people and the voices all around you start telling you you are not good enough, listen to God's voice, because that is not God. Oh, and then the next thing was the earthquake, the shaking of the earth. You know what? When things underneath you and your foundation, all things in life start shaking and people start coming around and saying, oh, hey, come over here because you're worthless over there. You're not into this. Was it God? Nope. And then the hot blaze of fire came, and was that God? Nope. If I want to truly understand who I am, I've got to stop listening to the roars of the crowd around me. I have to stop listening to the feelings inside of me that shake me up, that are telling me all these lies about myself. And I have to stop allowing the fires that are all around us to take my attention away and tell me that I'm all messed up. And I will listen to the still, small voice of the one who loves me, the one who chose me, the one who adopted me into his family, the one who walks me through the valley of the shadow of death, the one who prepares a table before me in the midst of my enemy. I will listen to that still, small voice of the one who gave his life for a sinner such as I. If you want to know who you are, listen to the still, small whisper of God's voice and believe what he says. Because he says, you are my child. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word tonight. We don't deserve your grace, but you gave it. We don't deserve your forgiveness, but you gave it. I don't deserve your welcoming me back home, but you invited me to your table. You've shown me grace, you've shown me forgiveness, and you've welcomed me home with open arms. So, Lord, tonight, as a congregation, we're no longer going to define ourselves by our past. We're not going to define ourselves by the mistakes we've made. Instead, we're going to accept your words of love, your words of forgiveness, because it's only through your eyes that we can see who we really are. And we are children of you, and I will believe what you say of me. Amen.